You people always think you belong somewhere you don't. Those 12 words cut through the first-class cabin of Flight 447 like a blade. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Every champagne glass froze midair. The silence that followed was so thick you could choke on it. 23-year-old Amara Jefferson stood frozen in the aisle, her boarding pass trembling slightly in her hand. She had walked onto this plane feeling accomplished, confident, ready to head home after the biggest deal of her career. But now she stood there, exposed, as a middle-aged white woman named Patricia Caldwell sat smugly in seat 2A, Amara's assigned seat, with her arms crossed over her designer blazer and a smile that dripped with contempt. Patricia looked Amara up and down slowly, taking in the casual hoodie, the comfortable jeans, the neat box braids that fell past her shoulders. Patricia's eyes made a judgment in that single glance. A judgment that dismissed everything Amara had worked for, everything she had built, everything she had earned with her own two hands. "I'm sure you're supposed to be in the back, sweetie," Patricia said, her voice sweet like poison wrapped in honey. "Why don't you go check with the flight attendant? I'm sure they can help you find your real seat." Amara felt the heat rise in her chest. She felt the familiar burn of being reduced to nothing more than the color of her skin. She had felt this before in boardrooms, in retail stores, in restaurants where waiters assumed she was there to pick up someone else's order. But this was different. This was loud. This was public. This was a woman looking her dead in the eyes and telling her she did not belong. What Patricia Caldwell did not know, what she could not possibly have guessed, was that the young woman standing before her in that casual hoodie was not just another passenger. Amara Jefferson was the founder and CEO of TechRise Solutions. She was a self-made billionaire who had built a technology empire from nothing but an idea, determination, and 18-hour workdays. Just that very morning, Amara had closed a $2.3 billion acquisition deal in Atlanta. The ink on the contracts was barely dry. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she was standing in an airplane aisle being told she did not belong in first class. But Patricia saw none of that. Patricia saw a young black woman in comfortable clothes and made a decision about who that woman was and where that woman belonged. It was a decision that was about to cost Patricia everything she had. "Ma'am, this is my seat," Amara said quietly. Her voice was steady, controlled, even though fire was building in her chest. She held up the boarding pass so Patricia could see it clearly. "Seat 2A. I have my ticket right here." Patricia did not even glance at the boarding pass. She did not acknowledge it at all. Instead, she let out a long, exaggerated sigh, the kind of sigh that said she was dealing with something beneath her. "Listen," Patricia said, her tone sharpening. "I've been flying first class for 30 years. I know how this works. Someone made a mistake, and it certainly wasn't me. Now, I suggest you find wherever you're actually supposed to sit before you make this difficult for everyone." The other first-class passengers watched in stunned silence. Some had their phones out, recording. Others simply stared, their faces a mixture of shock and discomfort. Nobody said a word. Nobody stepped in. They just watched. A flight attendant named Jennifer Kim rushed over, her face flushed with concern. She had seen the confrontation developing and moved as quickly as she could. Jennifer took one look at the situation and immediately reached for Amara's boarding pass. "May I see your ticket, ma'am?" Jennifer asked gently. Amara handed it over without a word. Jennifer scanned it, and her eyes went wide. Her expression shifted from professional concern to something deeper, recognition, perhaps, or maybe just the dawning realization of exactly how wrong this situation was. "Miss Jefferson," Jennifer said, her voice filled with apology. "I am so sorry. This is absolutely your seat." She turned to Patricia, her professional mask firmly in place but her jaw tight. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass as well." Patricia huffed dramatically. She pulled out her phone with exaggerated slowness, scrolling through it as if she had all the time in the world, as if a plane full of people were not waiting on her. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "I've never been so insulted in my life." Finally, she pulled up her digital boarding pass and thrust the phone toward Jennifer with a look of triumph on her face. Jennifer looked at the screen. Her expression hardened. "Ma'am," Jennifer said slowly, carefully, as if she were explaining something to a child. "Your seat is 12C. In economy. This passenger is correct, you are sitting in her assigned seat." The words landed like thunder. Patricia's face changed. The smugness drained away, replaced by something ugly: rage, embarrassment, and a desperate need to hold on to the power she felt slipping away. "That's impossible." Patricia's voice rose to a shriek that echoed through the cabin. "I specifically paid for first class. I'm a Platinum Elite member. There must be some kind of error in your system." She stood up abruptly, but she did not move out of the seat. Instead, she positioned herself to block Amara entirely, as if standing her ground physically could somehow make her right. I am not sitting in economy. Patricia continued, her voice growing louder with every word. Do you know who I am? My husband is Gerald Caldwell, senior partner at Caldwell and Associates. We will have your job for this. Jennifer remained calm, though Amara could see the tension in her shoulders. Ma'am, according to our system, you purchased an economy ticket. I'm going to have to ask you to move to your assigned seat. Absolutely not. Patricia was shouting now, her face red, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I'm not moving until this is sorted out properly. This girl probably stole someone's ticket or upgraded herself fraudulently. I want the captain involved. I want the police. I will not be treated this way. Amara stood perfectly still. She had learned long ago that losing her temper in situations like this never helped. It only gave people like Patricia more ammunition. So she stood there, her boarding pass still in her hand, her face calm even as her heart pounded in her chest. Passengers throughout the cabin were now openly filming. The situation had escalated beyond a simple seat dispute. This was a scene, a spectacle, and everyone knew it. Captain Robert Daniels emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of steady presence that commanded immediate attention. When he walked into the first-class cabin, people straightened up. Patricia stopped mid-sentence. What seems to be the problem here? Captain Daniels asked, his voice low and authoritative. Patricia pounced on the opportunity. Captain, thank goodness you're here. This young woman is claiming I'm in her seat, but I paid good money for first class. I think there's been some kind of fraud or identity theft situation here, and honestly, I'm uncomfortable flying until this is resolved. She lowered her voice to a stage whisper. She could be dangerous. Captain Daniels did not react to Patricia's accusations. He simply held out his hand to Jennifer, who gave him both boarding passes. He studied them carefully, taking his time, while the entire cabin held its breath. When he looked up, his expression could have frozen lava. Ma'am, he said to Patricia, your ticket is for seat 12C. This passenger is assigned to 2A. You need to move. Now. I will not. Captain Daniels cut her off. His voice dropped to a tone that left no room for argument. Ma'am, you have two choices. You can move to your assigned seat immediately, or I can have you removed from this aircraft. We are currently 15 minutes past our departure time because of this disruption. I will not ask again. Patricia's eyes darted around the cabin, desperately searching for support, for someone who would take her side, for anyone who would validate her behavior. She found nothing. Every passenger either looked away or stared at her with open disgust. She was alone. Fine, Patricia spat the word out like it burned her tongue. But this is not over. I'm filing a formal complaint. About her, she jabbed a finger at Amara, about you, about this entire airline. You haven't heard the last of this. She gathered her belongings with sharp, angry movements, yanking her designer purse from the overhead bin, snatching her jacket from the seat. But before she left, she leaned close to Amara. So close that Amara could smell her expensive perfume. So close that only Amara could hear her words. You might have fooled them, Patricia whispered, her voice dripping with venom. But I know exactly what you are. A little girl playing dress-up in a world you don't belong in. Enjoy your moment, sweetie. It won't last. Those words burned into Amara's mind. They stayed with her as Patricia finally moved out of the seat, as the woman stomped down the aisle toward economy, as the first-class cabin slowly returned to normal. That was the moment Amara made a decision. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Marcus? It's Amara. Yes, I'm still on the plane. Listen, I need you to look into something for me. The woman who just caused the scene, her name is Patricia Caldwell. Her husband is apparently named Gerald Caldwell, senior partner at some firm called Caldwell and Associates. I want to know everything. And Marcus? I want to know it fast. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Then she took her seat 2A, the seat she had paid for, the seat she had every right to, and she waited. The plane finally pushed back from the gate, and as it taxied toward the runway, Amara tried to calm the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Jennifer approached with a glass of champagne and a face full of genuine apology. Miss Jefferson, I cannot express how sorry I am about what just happened. That was completely unacceptable, and I want you to know that it does not represent our airline's values. Amara took the glass and offered a small smile. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. She paused for a moment, then asked, Can I ask you something? How often does this kind of thing happen? Jennifer's professional mask slipped for just a moment. Her eyes showed something real: exhaustion, frustration, a weariness that spoke of countless similar situations. More than it should, she admitted quietly. But usually not this blatant. Usually it's more subtle. But it happens. It happens more than people want to admit. Amara nodded slowly. She knew. Of course she knew. She had lived it her entire life. "Thank you for being honest with me," Amara said. "And thank you for doing the right thing." Jennifer nodded and moved on to attend to other passengers. Amara leaned back in her seat, the champagne untouched, her mind working through possibilities. Somewhere in economy class, Patricia Caldwell was seething. She had no idea that a simple phone call had just set something in motion. She had no idea that her life was about to fall apart. She had no idea that in trying to take Amara's seat, she had just handed over everything. 20 minutes into the flight, Amara's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus Chen, her head of security. She glanced at the screen, and what she saw made her sit up straighter. "Got something interesting. Call me when you can. This woman is not who she claims to be." Amara excused herself and made her way to the small space near the restrooms where she could have a semblance of privacy. She dialed Marcus. "Talk to me," she said. Marcus's voice was calm but urgent. "Patricia Caldwell. 52 years old. Wife of Gerald Caldwell, who is indeed a senior partner at Caldwell & Associates in Atlanta. But here's where it gets interesting. Patricia has 3 outstanding warrants in the state of Georgia." "Warrants?" Amara asked, her eyebrows rising. "For what?" "Writing bad checks. 3 separate incidents over the past 2 years, totaling over $50,000. She's been evading them, probably using her husband's connections to stay off the radar. But the warrants are active. She could be arrested right now if the right people knew where she was." Amara was silent for a moment, processing the information. The woman who had just accused her of fraud, who had demanded police involvement, who had suggested that Amara might be dangerous, that woman was herself a criminal running from the law. "There's more," Marcus continued. "I'm still digging, but there are some financial irregularities connected to the law firm. Nothing confirmed yet, but patterns that suggest someone has been moving money in ways they shouldn't. I'll have more details within the hour." "Do it," Amara said. "And Marcus? Contact Daniel Park. He's the director at Hartsfield-Jackson. I met him at the tech conference in San Francisco 6 months ago. Tell him we have a situation on Flight 447. Tell him there's a passenger on board with active warrants who caused a significant disturbance. See what he can do." "On it," Marcus said, and the line went dead. Amara returned to her seat, her expression unreadable. She was not a vindictive person by nature. She had built her company by focusing on her goals, not on revenge. But there was something about Patricia Caldwell that demanded action. It was not just what Patricia had done to Amara. It was what Patricia represented. It was the casual cruelty, the absolute certainty that she had the right to treat another human being as less than. It was the whispered words, "A little girl playing dress-up in a world you don't belong in." Amara belonged in every room she chose to enter. She had earned that right. And she was done letting people like Patricia Caldwell tell her otherwise. The minutes ticked by. Amara pretended to work on her laptop, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about all the times she had faced moments like this, the investor who had laughed when she pitched TechRise, saying she should find a nice tech company to work for instead of trying to start one. The conference where a security guard had tried to prevent her from entering a room where she was the keynote speaker. The countless microaggressions, the assumptions, the doors that had been slammed in her face. She had overcome all of it. She had built a billion-dollar company despite all of it. But she had never had the power to do anything about the people who had tried to tear her down. Until now. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus: "Daniel Park is making calls. Plane will be grounded upon return to Atlanta. Authorities will be waiting." Return to Atlanta. That meant the plane would have to turn around. That meant everyone on board would be delayed. That meant disruption, inconvenience, chaos. For a moment, Amara hesitated. Was this the right thing to do? Was she really going to ground an entire plane because of one racist woman? But then she remembered Patricia's whisper. She remembered the absolute certainty in Patricia's voice. She remembered all the Rachel Montgomerys of the world, a name she did not yet know, but whose story she would soon learn, the innocent people who had been crushed by women like Patricia because they did not have the power to fight back. Amara was not doing this just for herself. She was doing this for everyone who had ever been told they did not belong. She typed a reply to Marcus: "Make it happen." Captain Daniel's voice came over the intercom a few minutes later, and there was a tension in his tone that had not been there before. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we're going to need to return to the gate. We've received information regarding a passenger security concern that requires immediate attention. I ask for your patience as we work to resolve this matter as quickly as possible." Confused murmurs rippled through the cabin. Passengers looked at each other with bewildered expressions. Some groaned at the prospect of delays. Others speculated about what kind of security concern could force a plane to turn around mid-flight. Amara sat very still, her phone in her hand, her face betraying nothing. Back in economy class, Patricia Caldwell was still fuming. She had spent the past 20 minutes composing a mental list of all the people she was going to call, all the complaints she was going to file, all the ways she was going to make everyone pay for her humiliation. She had never been so disrespected in her life, and she was not going to let it go. When the captain's announcement came, Patricia assumed it was about her complaint. She assumed the airline had realized their mistake, that they were returning to the gate so they could properly apologize and upgrade her to first class where she belonged. A satisfied smile crossed her face. She had no idea what was actually waiting for her. The plane touched down at Hartsfield-Jackson and taxied to a remote gate. Through the windows, passengers could see several official vehicles parked on the tarmac, airport security, police cars, and an unmarked black SUV. The murmurs in the cabin grew louder. This was not a normal situation. The forward door opened, and 2 airport security officers boarded the plane. Behind them came a man Amara recognized, Daniel Park, the airport director himself. He was a tall Korean-American man in his 50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of authoritative presence that commanded immediate respect. Daniel walked briskly through first class, nodding briefly at Amara as he passed. Then he continued down the aisle into economy class. The passengers craned their necks, trying to see what was happening. The security officers positioned themselves in the aisle, blocking the view. But everyone heard what came next. "Patricia Caldwell?" Daniel Park's voice carried through the cabin. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us." "What? What is this about?" Patricia's voice was sharp, indignant. "I haven't done anything wrong. Ma'am, we have information regarding outstanding warrants for your arrest in the state of Georgia. I need you to gather your belongings and come with us quietly." "Warrants? That's ridiculous. This is a mistake. I'm the wife of Gerald Caldwell. Do you know who my husband is? He's a senior partner at one of the most prestigious law firms in Atlanta. You're making a huge mistake. Ma'am, please come with us. We can sort this out at the terminal." What happened next sent shockwaves through the plane. Patricia refused to move. She clung to her seat, screaming about her rights, about discrimination, about how she was going to sue everyone involved. The security officers had to physically remove her from her seat. As they put handcuffs on Patricia Caldwell, her screams echoed through the cabin. "You can't do this to me. I haven't done anything wrong. This is assault. This is discrimination. My husband will destroy all of you. Do you hear me? All of you." The passengers watched in stunned silence as Patricia was escorted up the aisle toward the front of the plane. Her designer clothes were rumpled now, her perfectly styled hair falling out of place, her face contorted with rage and disbelief. As she passed Amara's seat, their eyes met. And in that moment, something shifted in Patricia's expression. The rage flickered, replaced by something else: confusion at first, then dawning recognition, then pure horror. She understood now. She understood that the young black woman in the hoodie had done something. She understood that her whispered insults, her public humiliation, her absolute certainty that she could mistreat Amara without consequences, all of it had led to this moment. Patricia's face went from red to white in seconds. "You," she breathed, staring at Amara. "You did this." Amara met Patricia's gaze steadily. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply looked at the woman who had told her she did not belong and said nothing at all. The security officers pulled Patricia forward, and she was gone. Daniel Park returned to the front of first class and addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay and the disturbance. A passenger has been removed from the aircraft due to outstanding warrants. We will be departing shortly. Thank you for your patience." As Daniel passed Amara's seat, he paused briefly. "Ms. Jefferson," he said quietly, "it was good to hear from your team. I hope the rest of your flight is uneventful." "Thank you, Daniel," Amara replied. "I appreciate your quick response." He nodded and exited the plane. Jennifer approached Amara's seat a few minutes later, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and curiosity. "Ms. Jefferson, I have to ask, did you have something to do with that?" Amara looked up, her expression neutral. "I made a phone call," she said simply. "My head of security ran a background check. It turns out Patricia Caldwell had 3 outstanding warrants in Georgia for writing bad checks. Over $50,000 in total. She's been evading them for 2 years." Jennifer's mouth fell open. "You found that out in 20 minutes? I have good resources," Amara said. "When someone tells me I don't belong somewhere, I make it my business to find out exactly where they belong." Jennifer let out a small laugh of disbelief. That's incredible." Amara shook her head. "That's accountability. She wasn't just rude to me. She was a criminal who thought her status made her untouchable. She thought she could treat people however she wanted because of who her husband is, because of the world she thinks she belongs in. She was wrong. The plane pushed back from the gate again, this time for real. As it climbed into the sky, Amara finally took a sip of the champagne that had been sitting untouched beside her. It was warm now, but she did not care. It tasted like justice. But as she would soon discover, the bad checks were just the beginning. Patricia Caldwell's crimes ran far deeper than anyone knew. And the woman who had whispered that Amara did not belong was about to learn just how completely her own world was going to collapse. 2 days later, Amara was in Los Angeles. She stood at the head of a long conference table in TechRai's West Coast headquarters, presenting quarterly projections to her board of directors. The acquisition she had closed in Atlanta was already making waves in the tech industry, and the mood in the room was celebratory. Numbers were up. Investors were happy. The future looked bright. Then Marcus Chen burst through the door, tablet in hand, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something urgent. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Marcus said, "but you need to see this. Right now." Amara excused herself and stepped to the side of the room. Marcus handed her the tablet, and what she saw on the screen made her breath catch. The headline read, "Patricia Caldwell, wife of prominent Atlanta attorney, arrested at airport. Deeper investigation reveals embezzlement scheme." Amara's eyes moved rapidly across the article, absorbing the details. After Patricia's arrest at the airport, investigators had begun digging deeper into her background. What they found was far worse than bad checks. Patricia had been embezzling money from her husband's law firm for 3 years. Nearly $2 million had disappeared from client accounts, redirected through a complex web of shell companies and fraudulent invoices, all controlled by Patricia. She had used the money to maintain a lifestyle she could not afford. First-class flights that she never actually paid for. Luxury hotel stays on corporate cards that were not supposed to exist. Shopping sprees at high-end boutiques using credit information she had stolen from firm clients. The bad checks were just the tip of the iceberg, a small symptom of a much larger disease. Gerald Caldwell, the husband Patricia had invoked so confidently to threaten flight attendants and demand special treatment, was now cooperating fully with authorities. He had filed for divorce the moment he learned the truth. The man Patricia had used as a shield, the name she had wielded like a weapon, that man had turned against her the moment he understood what she had done. Amara finished reading and looked up at Marcus. "How did they find all this?" "The arrest triggered a financial review," Marcus explained. "Once they started looking at her accounts because of the bad checks, they noticed discrepancies. Those discrepancies led to the firm's accounts. One thing led to another. She was apparently very good at covering her tracks, but once someone started actually looking, the whole thing fell apart." Amara nodded slowly. She thought about Patricia's words on the plane. "Do you know who my husband is?" Patricia had asked. She had been so certain that name would protect her. So certain that her status, her connections, her position in society would shield her from consequences. But that was the thing about building your life on fraud and cruelty. Eventually, it caught up with you. Eventually, the foundation cracked and the whole structure came tumbling down. "Keep monitoring this," Amara said, handing the tablet back to Marcus. "Let me know if there are any developments." She returned to her board meeting, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about all the people Patricia must have hurt over the years. She was thinking about the clients whose money had been stolen. She was thinking about the flight attendants and service workers Patricia had belittled and threatened. She was thinking about everyone who had crossed Patricia's path and been made to feel small. Patricia Caldwell had built her life on the backs of others. And now, finally, the bill was coming due. 1 week later, Amara received an email that changed everything. It came from an address she did not recognize, with a subject line that simply said, "Thank you." The sender identified herself as Rachel Montgomery. "Ms. Jefferson," the email began, "I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to tell you something. I've been following the news about Patricia Caldwell's arrest, and I saw the video from the airplane. I saw what she said to you, how she treated you. And I need you to know that what happened to you on that plane, that was Patricia showing the world exactly who she's always been. I know because I was one of her victims." Amara leaned forward, her full attention now on the email. Rachel continued, 2 years ago, I was a paralegal at Gerald Caldwell's firm. I was good at my job. I was careful, detail-oriented, and I noticed things. And one of the things I noticed was financial discrepancies in the firm's accounts. Money was being moved in ways that didn't make sense. Client funds were being redirected to accounts that shouldn't have existed. When I brought my concerns to Patricia Caldwell, she handled the firm's finances. She thanked me for my diligence. She said she would look into it personally. She said I was exactly the kind of careful employee the firm needed. I thought I had done the right thing. 1 week later, I was arrested at my desk. Patricia had accused me of embezzlement. She said I was the one stealing the money. She presented evidence, bank statements, transfer records, emails that seemed to prove I was guilty. Everything was fabricated, but I didn't know that at the time. And neither did anyone else. I was fired immediately. The firm pressed charges. I spent 6 months in jail before the charges were quietly dropped due to insufficient evidence. But by then, the damage was done. My reputation was destroyed. I couldn't get another job in law. I lost my apartment. I lost my savings. I lost everything I had worked for. Patricia Caldwell didn't just steal money from that firm. She framed me to cover her tracks. And because I was a young black woman and she was the wife of a powerful white attorney, everyone believed her. No one questioned her story. No one looked deeper. They just saw me and decided I was guilty. I've spent 2 years trying to rebuild my life. 2 years of struggling, of being turned away from jobs, of carrying the weight of something I didn't do. And then I saw the news. I saw Patricia being arrested. I saw the investigation uncovering her embezzlement. And I realized I was right. I was right all along. She was the one stealing. And she destroyed my life to hide it. Ms. Jefferson, I don't know what you did to make this happen, but thank you. Thank you for being the person who finally stopped her. Thank you for standing up when so many others couldn't. You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever, hope. Amara read the email 3 times. Each time, she felt the weight of Rachel's words more heavily. This woman, this innocent woman, had lost everything because of Patricia Caldwell. Had gone to jail. Had been labeled a criminal. Had been denied opportunities, denied justice, denied the basic dignity of being believed. And the only difference between Rachel's experience and Amara's experience on that plane was that Amara had resources. Amara had money. Amara had connections. Amara had a head of security who could run a background check in 20 minutes and an airport director who would take her calls. Rachel had none of that. And so Rachel had suffered. Amara picked up the phone and called her legal team. I want to hire Rachel Montgomery, she said without preamble. Find her. Offer her a position as Senior Compliance Officer at TechRise Solutions. Starting salary, $250,000, full benefits, signing bonus of $50,000. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ms. Jefferson, we don't have a Senior Compliance Officer position currently available. Then create one, Amara said. Rachel Montgomery was wrongfully accused and wrongfully imprisoned because of Patricia Caldwell. She's exactly the kind of careful, detail-oriented person we need on our team. And I want our legal department to look into her case. If we can get her record expunged and file a civil suit for wrongful termination and false imprisonment, we're doing it. Whatever resources she needs, she gets. Is that clear? Yes, Ms. Jefferson. Perfectly clear. Amara hung up the phone and sat back in her chair, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in Georgia, Patricia Caldwell was sitting in a jail cell, facing charges that would keep her locked away for years. And somewhere else, a woman named Rachel Montgomery was about to receive a phone call that would change her life. This was what power was for, Amara thought. Not for domination. Not for humiliation. Not for making others feel small. Power was for lifting up. Power was for protecting. Power was for making sure that people who had been knocked down had a chance to stand up again. Patricia Caldwell had used her power to destroy. Amara Jefferson would use hers to rebuild. The weeks that followed Patricia Caldwell's arrest brought revelation after revelation. The investigation into her embezzlement uncovered a scheme that was far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. Patricia had not just stolen from her husband's law firm. She had created an entire shadow operation, fraudulent corporate accounts, fake vendors, forged invoices, all designed to funnel money into her personal accounts while making it look like legitimate business expenses. The total amount stolen exceeded $3 million. Some of that money had been recovered. Most of it was gone, spent on luxury goods, extravagant vacations, and the maintenance of an image that had never been real. Gerald Caldwell, once a respected figure in Atlanta's legal community, saw his reputation crumble alongside his wife's. Although he was not charged with any crimes, investigators determined he had genuinely been unaware of Patricia's activities. The damage was done. Clients fled. Partners distanced themselves. The firm that bore his name, the firm he had spent decades building, was forced to close its doors. Patricia's behavior on the airplane had gone viral. The videos recorded by passengers had been uploaded to social media, shared millions of times, analyzed and discussed on news programs and podcasts. "Do you know who my husband is?" became a mocking catchphrase, a symbol of entitled arrogance meeting well-deserved consequences. And then came the other victims. Rachel Montgomery was not the only person Patricia had destroyed over the years. Once the investigation went public, others came forward. A hotel housekeeper who had been fired after Patricia falsely accused her of theft. A restaurant server who had lost his job after Patricia complained about attitude that never existed. A young paralegal before Rachel who had simply stopped showing up to work one day and was later found to have suffered a mental breakdown from Patricia's constant harassment. The pattern was clear. Patricia Caldwell did not just mistreat people. She systematically targeted those she perceived as beneath her, those who could not fight back, those whose word would never be believed over hers. She had spent decades using her status as a weapon, confident that her position in society made her untouchable. That confidence was gone now. Patricia's trial was swift and damning. Her own financial records testified against her. The fake accounts, the forged documents, the trail of stolen money, all of it was laid bare for the court to see. Her attorneys tried to argue that she had been under psychological stress, that she had not understood the consequences of her actions, that she deserved leniency. The judge was unmoved. "Mrs. Caldwell," the judge said during sentencing, "you have spent years defrauding clients, destroying innocent lives, and treating others with a cruelty that is difficult to comprehend. You framed an innocent woman for crimes you yourself committed. You showed no remorse for your actions until you were caught, and even then, your primary concern seems to be for yourself rather than for those you have harmed." The judge paused, looking directly at Patricia. "You asked on that airplane, do you know who I am? I do know who you are now. The whole world knows who you are. And who you are is someone who believed that wealth and status placed you above the law. You were wrong." The sentence came down, 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10. Patricia would also be required to pay restitution to her victims. Whatever she had left, which was not much, would go toward compensating the people she had harmed. When the sentence was read, Patricia collapsed. She had to be helped out of the courtroom by officers. The woman who had once demanded to know if people knew who her husband was, who had called Amara a little girl playing dress-up, who had been so certain of her own superiority, that woman was now going to spend the next 15 years in a cell. Amara watched the coverage of the trial from her office in Los Angeles. She did not feel joy. She did not feel triumph. She felt something more complicated, a mixture of satisfaction that justice had been served and sorrow that it had taken so long, that so many people had been hurt before Patricia was finally stopped. Rachel Montgomery sat in the chair across from Amara's desk, watching the same coverage. She had accepted the position at TechRise 2 weeks earlier. Her record was in the process of being expunged. A civil lawsuit against the Caldwell estate was moving forward. "I never thought I'd see this day," Rachel said quietly. "I spent 2 years thinking nobody would ever believe me. That she would just get away with it forever." "She almost did," Amara replied. "If she hadn't tried to take my seat on that plane, if she hadn't been so blatant about it, she might have gotten away with it for years longer. Maybe forever." Rachel shook her head. "It's strange how things work out. The thing that finally brought her down wasn't the millions of dollars she stole. It wasn't the lives she ruined. It was a moment of arrogance on an airplane. She just couldn't help herself." "That's usually how it works," Amara said. "People like Patricia, they get away with things for so long that they start to believe they're invincible. They push further and further because nobody ever pushes back. And then one day, they push the wrong person, and everything falls apart." "I'm glad you were that person," Rachel said. "I'm glad you pushed back." Amara met her eyes. "I was lucky. I had resources. I had power. Not everyone does." "No," Rachel agreed. "Not everyone does. But maybe that's why people who do have power have a responsibility to use it for those who don't." Amara nodded slowly. That thought had been on her mind a lot lately. She had built a company. She had made money beyond what she had ever imagined. She had proven that she belonged in rooms where people had tried to keep her out. But what was the point of all that if she did not use it to make things better? "I've been thinking about that," Amara said. "About what comes next. About what I can do with everything I've built." "What did you come up with?" Amara smiled a real smile, the first one in weeks. "Something big." 2 months after Patricia Caldwell's sentencing, Amara Jefferson stood on a stage at the National Diversity in Tech Conference in Chicago. The auditorium was massive, 3,000 seats, every one of them filled. Industry leaders, entrepreneurs, students, activists, people from every background and walk of life had gathered to hear the keynote speech. The buzz of anticipation filled the room like electricity. When Amara walked onto the stage, the audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, lasting for nearly 2 full minutes before Amara raised her hands to quiet the crowd. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "Please, sit down. I have a story I want to tell you." The room fell silent. 3,000 people leaned forward in their seats. A few months ago, Amara began, I boarded a plane from Atlanta to Los Angeles. I was tired. I was wearing my comfortable clothes, hoodie, jeans, box braids. I had just closed the biggest deal of my career, and I was ready to go home. She paused, letting the moment settle. When I got to my seat 2A, first class, the seat I had purchased with my own money, there was a woman sitting in it. A white woman in her 50s, wearing designer clothes and an expression that made it clear she thought she belonged there and I did not. Amara's voice was steady, controlled. She looked at me and said something I will never forget. She said, "You people always think you belong somewhere you don't." A ripple of reaction moved through the audience. Some gasped. Others shook their heads. She told me I should go to the back of the plane. She told me I must have stolen my ticket or upgraded myself fraudulently. She told the captain I might be dangerous. She did everything she could to convince everyone around her that I, a young black woman, could not possibly have earned my place in that first-class seat. Amara let the words hang in the air. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know I was the CEO of a billion-dollar company. She didn't know I had just closed a deal that would change the trajectory of my industry. She looked at my skin, my clothes, my hair, and she decided that was all she needed to see. She decided I did not belong. But here's the thing, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. Here's what I want everyone in this room to understand. I did not need her to know who I was. I did not need her approval. I did not need to prove anything to her. I had my boarding pass. I had my seat assignment. I had every right to be exactly where I was. The audience was perfectly still, hanging on every word. When she leaned close to me and whispered that I was a little girl playing dress-up in a world I don't belong in, she was telling me about her limitations. Not mine. She was showing me the walls of the box she lived in. Not the wide-open space I had built for myself. Amara stepped away from the podium, walking closer to the edge of the stage. That woman is now serving 15 years in federal prison. Not because of what she said to me, but because of who she had always been. Her cruelty on that plane was not an isolated incident. It was a pattern. For decades, she had treated people, especially black people, especially people she considered beneath her, with contempt and malice. She had destroyed careers. She had ruined lives. She had framed an innocent woman for crimes she herself committed. What happened on that airplane was not the cause of her downfall. It was just the moment when the world finally saw her clearly. Amara gestured to the side of the stage, where a woman was standing in the shadows. I want to introduce you to someone. Her name is Rachel Montgomery. Rachel stepped into the light. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, her head held high, but there were tears streaming down her face. 2 years ago, Amara continued, Rachel was a paralegal at a law firm. She noticed financial irregularities. She reported them to the person responsible, Patricia Caldwell. And for that, Patricia framed her. Rachel was arrested, prosecuted, and sent to jail for 6 months for crimes she did not commit. When she got out, her life was destroyed. No one would hire her. No one believed her. She lost everything. Amara's voice cracked slightly, the emotion breaking through. And the only difference between what happened to Rachel and what happened to me on that airplane was that I had resources. I had a head of security who could run a background check in 20 minutes. I had connections. I had money. I had power. Rachel had none of those things. And so she suffered. The audience was silent. Some were crying. I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand something, Amara said. We can't all make a phone call that grounds a plane. We can't all run background checks or have connections to airport directors. But every single one of us has power. The people who filmed that incident on their phones, they had power. The flight attendant who stood up for me and refused to back down, she had power. The passengers who looked at Patricia with disgust instead of agreement, they had power. Power is not just money and connections. Power is also voice. Power is refusing to be silent when you see injustice. Power is believing people when they tell you they've been wronged. Power is standing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's risky, even when you're not sure it will make a difference. Collectively, that power is unstoppable. When we use it together, we can change the world. Amara returned to the podium. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Belonging Initiative. It's a $50 million fund dedicated to helping people who have been wrongfully terminated, falsely accused, or professionally destroyed by discrimination and false accusations. We will provide legal support, job placement, financial assistance, and whatever else is needed to help people rebuild their lives. The audience erupted in applause. Amara waited for it to subside. Rachel Montgomery will be running this program. She knows, better than anyone, what it means to have your life taken from you by someone who thought they were above consequences. And she knows what it means to get that life back. Rachel stepped forward to the microphone. Her voice was shaky but determined. "When I was released from jail 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never recover from what Patricia Caldwell did to me. I thought nobody would ever believe my side of the story." She took a deep breath. "But someone believed me. Someone gave me a chance. And now I'm standing on this stage, with a job that matters, with a purpose that means something, with a future I thought I had lost forever." Rachel looked out at the audience. If you're out there right now, and you're going through something similar, if someone has tried to destroy you, if the system has failed you, if you feel like nobody is listening, I want you to know, you are not alone. We see you. We believe you. And we're going to fight for you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. 3 years later, Amara boarded another flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles. She walked to seat 2A in first class, and she sat down without incident. No one questioned her. No one demanded to see her ticket. No one suggested she belonged somewhere else. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Amara thought about how far she had come. Not just from that humiliating day, but from every moment of doubt, every assumption, every time someone had looked at her and decided who she was supposed to be. She had proven them all wrong. Not by arguing. Not by shouting. But by building something that spoke for itself. The flight attendant approached with a smile. "Ms. Jefferson, it's wonderful to have you flying with us today. Can I get you anything?" Amara looked at the flight attendant's name tag. Jennifer. A different Jennifer, but the name brought back memories. "Just some water, thank you," Amara said. "And Jennifer, thank you for treating everyone with dignity. It matters more than you know." Jennifer looked slightly confused by the comment but smiled warmly. "Of course, Ms. Jefferson. That's what we're here for." As the plane climbed into the sky, Amara opened her laptop and began working on the next project. Because that was what she did. She built. She created. She made space for others. Amara Jefferson did not just take her seat. She built the table, pulled up her chair, and made sure there was room for everyone else who deserved to be there too. And somewhere in a federal prison in Georgia, Patricia Caldwell had 15 years to think about the moment she decided a young black woman in a hoodie did not belong in first class. 15 years to remember those whispered words, "A little girl playing dress up in a world you don't belong in." Those words had been meant to wound. Instead, they had become the beginning of Patricia's end. Because Amara Jefferson was not playing dress up. She was not pretending. She belonged in every room she chose to enter. And she had spent her entire life proving it. Patricia Caldwell never understood that. She never understood that the world was changing, that the old rules no longer applied, that power was shifting to those who had been denied it for too long. She understood it now. Sitting in that cell, with nothing but time and regret, she finally understood. But understanding came too late. The damage was done not to Amara, but to Patricia herself. The empire she had built on lies and cruelty had crumbled completely. The husband she had used as a shield had abandoned her. The status she had weaponized had evaporated. The power she had wielded so carelessly had turned against her. All because she could not see past her own prejudice. All because she looked at Amara Jefferson and saw only what she expected to see. That was the lesson. That was the moral. That was the truth that echoed through this entire story. You never know who you are mistreating. You never know whose seat you are trying to take. You never know when your cruelty will finally catch up with you. But it will. It always does. Justice may be delayed. Justice may take strange paths. But in the end, justice rises. It rose for Rachel Montgomery, who now runs a program that has helped over 1,000 wrongfully accused people rebuild their lives. It rose for Amara Jefferson, who transformed a moment of humiliation into a movement for change. It rose for every person who has ever been told they do not belong. And it fell, with the weight of 15 years, on Patricia Caldwell. What goes around comes around. Every time. What would you have done if you were Amara in that moment? Would you have made that phone call? Would you have let Patricia walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And let me know, do you think 15 years was enough? Or did Patricia deserve more? If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they belong, no matter what anyone tells them. More Black justice stories are coming. Every week, we're bringing you stories of karma, accountability, and triumph. This is Black Lives Stories. And we are just getting started.